If you're over 55 and have ever felt like your erection starts but doesn't last, I need you to listen to this very carefully because what I'm about to tell you today isn't a pill, it's not an expensive treatment, and it's not something that puts your heart at risk. I'm Dr. Natalia Ríos, a urologist, and for over 20 years, I've worked with men who thought their problem was age, when in reality it wasn't. What almost no one tells you is this: there's a common spice, yes, something you probably have in your kitchen right now, that by chewing it for just 60 seconds before bed can help reactivate the blood flow your erection needs to stay firm. And no, I'm not talking about desire, fantasies, or putting in effort. I'm talking about real circulation, chemical signals, vessels that start responding again. The most surprising thing is that most men never use it this way, and that's why they spend years looking for the wrong solutions. Stay with me because before I tell you what this spice is, you need to understand why your body changed and why forcing it only makes things worse. This can change much more than you imagine. Before continuing, I want you to know something very important. This isn't a public video. This is a private and safe space between you and me. You're not here out of curiosity. You're here because something inside you doesn't feel the same as before. And let me tell you something with complete honesty. Most men who reach this point don't dare talk about it with anyone. Not their doctor, not their friends, sometimes not even their own partner. I've seen men in their 60s, 65s, even 70s sit in front of me in silence, looking at the floor, searching for the right words to explain something that hurts their pride more than their body. Many tell me the same thing in a low voice. Doctor, I want to, but my body doesn't respond. And that moment is devastating because it's not just an erection that's failing. It's confidence, security, the feeling of still being a man. You start avoiding caresses, long kisses, intimacy. Not because you don't want it, but because you're afraid of failing again. That fear builds up, gets bottled up in silence, and over time turns into emotional distance. If you've recognized yourself in any of these words, I want you to listen to this carefully. You're not alone, you're not broken, and this isn't a sentence because of age. Your body isn't betraying you. Your body is just reacting to internal changes that no one explained to you. And once you understand that, the shame starts to disappear, and hope comes back through the door. Stay with me, because now that we're in a safe space, it's time to start understanding what's really happening inside you. Over these 2 decades, I've seen a pattern repeat itself over and over. Intelligent, hardworking, disciplined men who've been successful in almost every aspect of their lives, except one that almost no one dares to mention. Most come thinking their problem is psychological, others believe it's hormonal, many assume it's just age. But when I examine them, review their medical history, observe how their circulatory and nervous systems respond, I realize something very clear. In the vast majority of cases, the problem isn't lack of desire, it's lack of adequate blood flow. As a urologist, my job isn't to sell illusions or quick fixes. My responsibility is to understand how the male body works and why certain changes appear with age. And this is where many treatments fail. They focus on forcing an immediate response instead of supporting the body's natural processes. I don't believe in pushing the body to its limit. I believe in reactivating what's already there and restoring the signals the body has lost over time. That's why when I recommend something, I don't do it because it's trendy, but because I've seen in real consultations how small adjustments can lead to profound changes. And what I'm about to share with you comes exactly from that clinical experience. Before continuing, if this topic is important to you, subscribe to the channel and leave your age in the comments. That way, I'll know who I'm creating these videos for and can help you better. Over the years, changes arrive silently. They don't appear overnight. They settle in little by little, almost without you noticing. At first, it's just fatigue. You wake up in the morning and feel like your body doesn't start with the same energy. You sleep, but you don't rest. You exert less effort than before, but you feel more exhausted. Then the physical changes start, that belly fat that wasn't there before, muscles that look softer, clothes that no longer fit the same even if you eat the same. But the hardest part isn't that. The hardest is what happens in intimacy. Maybe at first you thought it was a one-off, a bad day, stress, tiredness, but then it happens again and again, and you start noticing a pattern. The erection appears, but it's not firm, or it doesn't last, or it disappears right when you need it most. And in that moment, something breaks inside. Not because you can't have sex, but because you start doubting yourself. You start wondering what's failing, your body, your age, if you're no longer enough. Many men tell me the worst isn't the physical failure, but what happens afterward in their mind, the anticipation, the fear, the internal pressure. You go to bed with your partner, and instead of enjoying the moment, your head is full of questions. Will it work today? What if it fails again? What if she notices? That fear creates constant tension, tension that builds night after night, and little by little, you start avoiding situations. You avoid long caresses, deep kisses, spontaneous intimacy. Not because you don't want it, but because you prefer to avoid the possibility of failing. That silence creates distance. There aren't always arguments, sometimes there's something worse: coldness. Your partner might not say anything, but you feel it. You feel that something changed, and in many cases, that feeling is lived in complete solitude. Because as a man, no one taught you to talk about this. They taught you to endure, to stay quiet, to solve it alone. But carrying this in silence takes a toll on self-esteem, security, identity, and the most unfair part is that most men believe this is inevitable, that it's the price of getting older, that there's nothing to do. But that's not true. What you're experiencing isn't the end of your intimate life. It's a signal, a warning that something internal needs attention. And when you understand that, it stops being a sentence and starts being an opportunity. When a man starts experiencing erection failures, he almost always follows the same path, not because he wants to, but because it's the only one shown to him. He looks for a quick solution, something that works now, something that doesn't require too much thinking. And that's where the pills come in. They promise immediate results, firmness, recovering what you think you've lost. But what almost no one explains is how they really work. These pills don't repair anything. They don't improve your circulation, don't restore sensitivity, don't restore the body's natural balance. All they do is force a response. It's like revving an engine that hasn't had maintenance in years. For a few minutes, it seems to work, but the wear and tear is huge. Many men describe exactly the same thing after taking them: strong palpitations, headache, chest pressure, a constant feeling of alertness. Some even feel fear that their heart won't handle the effort, and yet they keep using them because they feel they have no other option. But here's the uncomfortable truth that almost no one says out loud. If you need to force your body to respond, the problem isn't solved. Plus, over time, the effect diminishes. The dose is no longer enough, the body gets used to it, and dependency increases. Instead of confidence, anxiety appears. Instead of security, pressure. And that's the opposite of what an erection needs. The male body doesn't respond well to chemical violence. It responds to balance, to the right signals, to adequate flow. That's why, before talking about real solutions, it was necessary for you to understand this. Forcing is never repairing. And as long as you keep pushing your body, you'll keep moving away from a lasting solution. To understand why so many solutions fail, we first need to clarify something very important. An erection isn't an act of will. It doesn't depend on how much you want it, how much love you feel, or even how much testosterone you have. An erection is essentially a very precise physical process. Let me explain it as clearly as possible. Imagine for a moment that your body is an old house. For years, it worked perfectly. The water flowed without issues, the pressure was good, everything responded instantly. But over time, the pipes start to change. They become more rigid, accumulate residue, lose elasticity. The same thing happens inside your body. An erection happens when the brain sends a clear signal. The blood vessels in the penis relax, and a large amount of blood enters quickly and stays there. That's it. It's not magic, it's hydraulics. The problem arises when that system stops responding like before. With age, the production of a key molecule called nitric oxide decreases. This molecule is what gives the order to the blood vessels to open. Without it, the arteries remain tense, rigid, closed. It's like trying to inflate a tire with a half-blocked valve. The air enters, but not enough, and it escapes easily. That's why many men feel the erection appears, but doesn't reach the necessary firmness or is lost quickly. It's not lack of desire, it's lack of signal. Add to that another factor almost no one mentions: the nervous system. When there's fear, anxiety, or stress, the body releases adrenaline, and adrenaline has a direct effect. It closes the blood vessels. It's a survival mechanism. The body doesn't differentiate between real danger and fear of failure. For it, it's the same. So you have a very common combination after 60. Less nitric oxide, less elastic vessels, and a nervous system on alert. And now you understand something crucial. The pills don't create nitric oxide, don't clean the arteries, don't calm the nervous system. All they do is push blood by force, raising pressure and internal stress. That's why they work halfway and fail over time. The real solution isn't about pushing harder, it's about teaching the body to open the pathway again, supporting the right signal, allowing the flow to happen naturally. And now that you understand this, you're ready to see why something so simple, so everyday, can have such a profound impact when used the right way. At this point, most men expect me to mention a medication, an expensive supplement, or some complex treatment only available at specialized clinics. But what I'm about to tell you usually gets a very different reaction because the answer isn't in a pharmacy, doesn't require a prescription, and doesn't come in a fancy box with exaggerated promises. The answer has been right in front of you for years. In fact, it's very likely you've seen it hundreds of times. Maybe you've even used it for cooking. It might even be in a drawer in your kitchen right now, and yet almost no man associates it with their circulation, much less their erection. This isn't a coincidence. For years, the conversation about erections has been reduced to two extremes: either immediate chemical force or silent resignation. No one talks about the small natural stimuli that the body recognizes and responds to without resistance. As a urologist, I've learned to observe something very specific. When a solution is too simple, the mind tends to dismiss it. If it were that easy, I'd already know. If it worked, everyone would do it. But biology doesn't work by popularity, it works by signals. And there are signals the body understands perfectly, even if marketing ignores them. Years ago, I started noticing a curious pattern in some patients. Men who, without aggressive treatments, showed gradual improvements in their nocturnal vascular response. It wasn't immediate, it wasn't spectacular, but it was consistent. When reviewing habits, schedules, and small daily rituals, a common element appeared, something that hadn't been prescribed as treatment but coincided with better erection quality. At first, I took it as a coincidence. Then it happened again and again until I stopped ignoring it. The interesting thing is that this element doesn't act during the day. When the body is on alert, when stress dominates, when circulation is spread across 1,000 functions, its impact appears when the body shuts down, when the nervous system slows, when the vessels relax, when the organism enters repair mode. It's in that moment that this natural signal makes sense. And here's where I want you to pay attention. I'm not talking about increasing desire, stimulating the mind, or forcing a sexual response. I'm talking about supporting the flow in the only time of day when the body is truly ready to listen. That's why the timing is as important as the element. It's not about consuming something at any hour. It's about a brief, conscious ritual repeated the same way every night. A ritual that lasts just 60 seconds. In that minute, something very interesting happens internally, something that doesn't feel like a sexual stimulus but prepares the ground for the body to respond better when the time comes. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet because first you need to understand why doing it wrong or half-heartedly produces no effect. In the next step, I'll reveal what this spice is, why doctors almost never talk about it, and what makes it different when used the right way. And then everything will start to click. The time has come to say it clearly. The spice I've been talking about is clove. Yes, that small dark clove that many associate only with cooking or the aroma of some sweets. What almost no one knows is that from a urological and vascular perspective, clove has very interesting properties that the male body recognizes immediately. Clove is rich in eugenol, a natural compound that's been studied for its ability to support circulation, improve vascular response, and promote blood vessel relaxation. It doesn't act as an aggressive stimulant. It doesn't force the body to respond. It works in a much more subtle and therefore safer way. What it does is facilitate flow. And here's something important. The male body responds better to gentle, repeated signals than to strong, isolated blows. That's why clove doesn't work like a pill that promises an immediate erection. Its effect is progressive, cumulative, respectful of the biological rhythm. So, why does almost no one talk about this? The answer is simple. Because it's not profitable, it can't be patented, it can't be sold at high prices, it doesn't create dependency. Modern medicine, especially regarding sexual function, has been pushed for years toward quick and visible solutions, even if they're not the most suitable for the long term. Plus, clove doesn't fit the traditional narrative. It's too simple, too accessible, too everyday. And yet, when used the right way and at the right time, it can support exactly the process many men need after 60. Better nocturnal circulation, better vascular response, and a more stable base for the erection. I want to be very clear about something. This isn't a miracle cure. It doesn't replace medical treatment when there's a serious condition, and it doesn't act overnight. But as a urologist, I've seen something I can't ignore. When flow improves, when vessels respond better, when the nervous system stops being on constant alert, erectile function changes. Not because the body is forced, but because it goes back to doing what it always knew how to do. And clove, used correctly, is one of those simple signals that help the body remember. In the next step, I'll explain something key, why the time of day you use this spice makes a huge difference in the results. And then you'll understand why nighttime isn't a coincidence. The moment you do something is as important as what you do. And in the case of the male body, nighttime plays a key role that almost no one considers. During the day, your organism is in survival mode. The nervous system is active, the mind is occupied. Blood is distributed among muscles, organs, and brain to respond to stress, work, and worries. It's not the best time to ask the body to repair, regenerate, or improve deep circulation. That happens at night. When you go to bed, the body enters a completely different phase. Heart rate drops, blood vessels start to relax. The parasympathetic nervous system, the one in charge of recovery, takes control. It's in that state where the body is most receptive to gentle signals. That's why many key malfunctions happen while sleeping: vascular repair, hormonal balance. Nocturnal erections, which aren't sexual but physiological, are the body's way of keeping the tissue healthy. When a natural signal like that from clove is introduced right before sleep, it doesn't compete with the day's stress, doesn't get diluted among stimuli, and doesn't need to force any process. It simply accompanies what the body is already doing. Plus, nighttime eliminates a silent enemy of the erection: mental pressure. There are no expectations, no fear of failure, no judgment, just rest. That's why nighttime use doesn't seek to provoke an immediate erection. It seeks something smarter, preparing the internal ground so flow improves naturally, over time. When you understand this, everything makes sense. It's not about stimulating, it's about allowing. And now that you know why nighttime is key, it's time to see how to put this into practice exactly, without mistakes and without exaggerations. I want to tell you the story of one of my patients because it reflects exactly what many men live through in silence. Let's call him Luis. Luis was 63 when he came to my office. He wasn't looking for a miracle solution. In fact, he was tired of them. He'd tried pills, expensive supplements, read all kinds of advice online. Some worked once, others not at all, but they all had something in common. They made him feel forced, dependent, insecure. Luis didn't have a serious health problem. His heart was fine, his tests showed nothing alarming. And yet his erection was weak and unstable. The hardest part, he told me, wasn't the physical failure. It was the constant feeling of letting his partner down, the anticipation, the fear. He slept poorly, thought too much, and his body was always on alert. When I explained that his problem wasn't lack of desire, but a combination of slow circulation and nervous tension, for the first time I saw him relax. I didn't propose medications, didn't promise immediate results. I asked for something very simple: a small nighttime ritual. Nothing more. Luis doubted, as many men do when something seems too straightforward. But he agreed to try it for 30 days without exaggerated expectations. Just consistency. The first nights he didn't feel anything special. There were no spectacular changes, and that was important because it didn't create pressure. After a few weeks, he started noticing something different. He slept better, woke up feeling more rested, his body felt less tense. And then something happened that he wasn't seeking. The response came naturally, without effort, without anxiety. When he came back to see me, he didn't talk about potency. He talked about tranquility, confidence, feeling comfortable in his own body again. That's what happens when you stop pushing the body and start accompanying it. It's not an abrupt change, it's a transition, and it's exactly that kind of change that has the best chance of lasting over time. Now that you understand the context, the biology, and the why, it's important we talk about how to put this into practice. Because this ritual is simple, but as with many simple things, doing it wrong means getting no benefit. You don't need large amounts, combinations, or complications. This is exactly what you should do every night right before bed. When you finish your day's activities, when the body starts to relax, take a single whole clove. Not ground, not in capsules, not mixed with anything. Place it in your mouth and start chewing it slowly. Don't swallow it right away. The goal is to allow its natural compounds to release through saliva and interact with the mucous membranes. For about 60 seconds, chew calmly, without hurry, without tension. It's normal to notice an intense flavor, even a slight warmth or numbness on the tongue that indicates the compounds are active. After that minute, swallow the clove with a bit of warm water, not cold, not hot, and that's it. You don't need to repeat it several times a day, don't need to increase the amount. More isn't better. This ritual works through consistency, not excess. I've seen many men make the mistake of changing the process, doing it halfway or doing it at random times of day, and then say it didn't work. The body responds to clear, repeated signals. Give it exactly the same signal every night and let it do its part. In the next step, I'll explain what changes you might start noticing and what you shouldn't expect in the first days. I want you to have clear expectations from the start, because that makes the difference between giving up too soon or allowing the body to do its work. In the first days, it's most likely you won't notice obvious changes in the erection, and that's normal. This ritual isn't designed to provoke an immediate response. It doesn't act as the stimulant, doesn't push the body. What some men notice at the beginning are more subtle changes. A deeper sense of rest, less tension when going to bed, more continuous sleep. Those signals are important. They indicate the nervous system is leaving alert mode and entering recovery mode. Over the weeks, and as long as you're consistent, that's when clearer changes start to appear. The response becomes more stable, firmness holds better, anxiety decreases. And something very important, you stop being hyper aware of whether it will work or not. The body responds better when it doesn't feel observed or pressured. If after several days you don't feel anything special, it doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means the process is internal. This isn't a race, it's an adaptation. Give it time. Consistency is part of the effect.